Okay, so for the awards this year, we're going to do things slightly differently, and so we think it's incredibly important that we do hear from and know of fantastic examples in conservation and tourism, whether it be wildlife focused, hopefully wildlife and community focused. But the way we're going to do it is we'd ask you either to simply nominate yourself or nominate somebody that you know of who is doing something incredible. And the reason we think it's vitally important, despite the fact of COVID, is that COVID is a breakdown of our relationship with the natural world. Biodiversity loss is another one of those, and longer term, it will have just as big, in fact, it'll have a much bigger impact on our lives than COVID. So we must get biodiversity, responsible tourism, and conservation right. So perhaps Richard or Glyn, I mean, what are your thoughts on why should people come forward now and nominate themselves or suggest somebody else? And why do you think that responsible tourism and wildlife is so important now under COVID?
Well, let me start with why people should nominate themselves. You know, there's a lot of talk about how clients, and at the end of the day, it's the client that counts. If you don't have a client, you don't have a business. So there's a lot of talk about how people are looking for authentic experiences. They're looking for cultural involvement. They're wanting a deeper experience. They're wanting to see how communities benefit. But in looking for where those experiences are, how do you identify where they are? There's a myriad of products around, and the only way you can identify them is by knowing that there are products that you can visit, places you can go to and experience that have been recognized for what they do. So if you're not involved in that recognition, then you're just going to be one of the many. And I think that there is a changing tendency amongst people, and they're going to be looking for those types of products. So it's a benefit to anyone who believes that's what they do to enter the awards and get that recognition.
Thank you,
yeah,
Richard.
I would add, exactly what Glyn is saying is what I think I would have said. I just know from my own part of the world, which is sort of Kenya, and particularly northern Kenya, there are some fantastic examples of what we call conservancies owned by communities, some of them privately owned, which are doing some of the most extraordinary things, not only from a conservation perspective, but also in terms of the impact they're having from an economic and social perspective, and where the economic and social kind of narrative has been interwoven with the needs of conservation. And for me, it's groundbreaking stuff, but you never get to hear about them for whatever reason. Often because they're probably reticent about putting themselves forward, or they don't realize the value of what it is that they're achieving, and how that could be of incredible importance, not only to the world of conservation, but also to the evolving world of responsible tourism. So for me, that's the reason. We all need to get out there. We all need to get out and demonstrate what we're doing. And I'm sure the markets are changing. I'm sure the markets are becoming more discerning. I'm sure they're becoming more, a little bit more picky and choosy about where they go. They want to see that where they're going is responsibly operated from a conservation perspective, but also from a social and economic perspective. And all of those are going to be wrapped into people's decision making about where they go in the future. So for me, it's really important.
Just about to both of you. I mean, do you think that in times of crisis, there is an increased need and hunger for innovation? Do you think that's what crisis brings? And do you also think that coming out of COVID, there's going to be a massive appetite for innovation in tourism that's around the natural world? Do you think that the interest and the pace of development will accelerate or need to accelerate, and our need to understand and visit as tourists becomes more important?
Well, certainly I think there's going to be a changed pattern of tourism. And I think that those who recognize that and adapt their businesses to meet the expectation of the guest of the future are going to be the ones that succeed. I do think that whereas in the past it's been quite challenging to really promote the idea of rural tourism and authentic tourism, I think that's going to change. Well, I'm certainly very hopeful it's going to change. I think the notion of the wide open spaces and a deeper appreciation of the environment is going to be critical. So that type of innovation and immersive, I know, sometimes that word gets used too glibly, but the immersive type travel where you actually do participate with a potter in a village, learning to make a pot the way they do, or sitting around the fire chatting to people rather than just being there as an observer. We talk about our own products as being places to experience, not merely observe.
Is that another booking? Is that a booking coming in, Glenn?
I wish it was. But we talk about our places as being places to experience, not merely observe, and that to me is critically important. So yes, I think in answer to your question, there will be a changed pattern of consumption from the tourists themselves, and I think we're going to have to adapt to that. I don't know for how long all these protocols are going to last. I think they will probably be relatively short-lived. It won't be too long before 2 meters becomes 1 meter, becomes half a meter, and things like that. But I think it's given people a wake-up call. And it goes back to the issue of sharing. And for me, that's always been a critically important concept, is the concept of fairness. How do you work together? How do you share? Because there is just too much greed in what people do. There's too much short-termism. And yet, having said that, Richard's point is absolutely true. To see the number of companies and people through a crisis like that who are doing admirable work and yet don't receive the recognition for it, either because they themselves don't seek the recognition or because maybe they're just not seen and they don't expose what they do sufficiently well.
Thank you. Richard, I mean, do you think the world's more hungry for innovation and brilliant natural-based experiences and conservation? Do you think it will be? Do you think that's why we need the nominations in more than ever this year?
Yeah, I do. I just to add, I mean, I agree with everything that Glenn is saying. I would add a few points. I think, again, I'm talking a little bit about Kenya, where, the idea is that you come on safari, you drive or fly to a game park, you drive around in the morning and you drive around in the evening, and you hopefully see some wildlife, and then you sit by the pool, and 2 days later you fly off to some other game park and do pretty much the same thing. I think that, that those kinds of models are changing. I think they were changing before, but I think they're changing more rapidly now. I wonder if we're not going to go back to that word that Glenn was using, immersive. What I'm seeing is people, they don't just want to come to a place and be presented with it. They want to live it. They want to be inside it. They want to understand it. And the conservation world can do that, really well. And there's a hunger, I think, in the world's kind of traveling public for more of that. And the other thing I see, I mean, I definitely agree with Glenn that these kind of protocols that I'm sure they will be relatively short-lived. I think it's kind of inevitable. But for me, it's going to be a little. We in Kenya have a major horticultural industry. You go back 20 years ago, those guys could make money at the drop of a hat. They could grow flowers in a big greenhouse. Labor was plentiful and cheap. There was more demand than supply could provide, and they had great prices, and they made lots of money. As the industry has developed, the people buying their products have become more discerning, they've become more educated, and they've become more demanding. And now those flower farms are working on much thinner margins. They have to treat their labor forces much better. They have to be supportive of the surrounding community. They can't use as many chemicals to make things grow, and they're subject to scrutiny, deep scrutiny on a really regular basis. And I'm sure that is going to begin to happen probably more and more in the travel industry, and certainly in this part of the world, it's already beginning to happen. And I'm not advocating for more regulation. What I am advocating for, I think, is studied, well thought out improvements to the way that our industry does its business, so that all of the multiplier effects that we want to see, such as the creation of social and economic benefit, can begin to properly happen. And it's not just a few people getting rich, which has been the case hitherto in large parts of the industry, certainly in Kenya. So I do see changes there that are beginning to happen.
Well, thank you. I think what you've both done is painted a little bit of a picture as to where we think the future might lie. And Glyn, as always, I think you come back so well to the fundamentals and some of the philosophy, which is so important. So what we're looking for with the awards is, we're looking for you to nominate yourself or somebody else. It can just be a short paragraph that you send us. And we're looking for businesses that are showing real resilience, which is the word we've not used, but we should do under COVID. And for businesses which are showing us the future a little bit. And I, for one, think it's needed more than ever right now. So please nominate yourself, nominate somebody else, help us know where to visit and book our next trip, and help those of us in the industry know where the future might lie and inspire us by that.
Thanks, Justin and Glyn and Richard. I'd just like to add that it seems to me that the analogy with a war is frequently made. Some companies are going to have a good war and some are going to have bad ones. Some companies will build their reputation through this period by the way they engage with the destinations, with the places we love to visit, with the communities and with the wildlife. Others have just looked after themselves, and there's plenty of coverage of that in the press in the originating markets. I think there's a great opportunity for those businesses which have gone the extra mile to demonstrate their commitment to the destinations that they sell in the European and the world markets. It's a great opportunity for them to demonstrate their credentials by engaging in this with the people in the destinations on whom we are dependent for international tourism. Thanks very much, much appreciated.
Thank you.